Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Startup Operators Weekly Roundup. This has been a really interesting week with the government actually asking EV manufacturers to stop production of new models with the ongoing cases of two-wheelers catching fire around the country. And I think one of the most anticipated item for this month was the launch of ONDC, which recently went live across 5 cities in India. Flipkart has opened up its logistic arm eCart for other e-commerce players to make use of, and Swiggy has launched a new career accelerator program for its delivery executives for them to take up managerial roles. But before we get started, if this is the first time you're tuning into the weekly roundup, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment as to how you enjoyed the show. And Roshan, as always, thanks for joining us. And I think the biggest news from the week was, of course, Elon Musk acquiring Twitter.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, the billionaire shitposter and the Iron Man of our times has done it, I mean, I was so stoked actually when I heard of it. It still is going to take time, right? I mean, I think the deal is going to come through in October of this year, and there's a lot that can happen in the interim period. Although the board has accepted the proposal at, I think, $54. Balaji Srinivasan had a pretty interesting article on how Elon should launch something called an Elon coin for all of the Twitter users, right? And make this more than the American policy and American establishment, because I think he's got a very valid point. I mean, considering that the mainstream American establishment right now, all of them are pretty unanimously against Elon, acquiring Twitter, right? It might be an uphill battle for him to go one up against them, right? Instead, I think he should make it larger than that. Fantastic article, do check it out for sure. It's remarkable, I mean, Elon recognizes that Twitter is the modern digital public sphere, right? It's the town center basically, right? And even by numbers, I mean, if you look at it, they have probably 350 million users, which is definitely less than Facebook, which is probably at 3 billion users right now, right? Or even some of the others, right? But Twitter has an inordinate amount of influence, with the kind of personalities and the kind of content that gets generated and stuff, right? So it is the nerve center of news for the current age. And I think that's what makes it lucrative, right? And Elon seems to be like a classical libertarian, liberal types, right? So he believes in absolute freedom of speech, at least that which is guaranteed by the Constitution. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, there were very, extreme reactions on Twitter, where most people, I mean, there were some of them who said that, they're going to quit Twitter and...
But I think that's like a phase that always comes and goes, right? With any.
Yeah, I mean, so he also posted a meme, right? I mean, that, that the left over the last 4 or 5 years has become so extreme left that even someone like him, who you might consider a classical liberal, is almost right of center today. And I think a lot of people identify with that, with this whole cancel culture prevailing and stuff, right? So, but anyway, I mean, interestingly, from a product and a startup perspective, I think it's excellent. I've always talked about, the potential for Twitter to become really amazing, like a sound business as such. And, while Elon is a genius, he's also a very calculative businessman, right? And I think he will probably make Twitter, realize that full potential of the platform, So I'm really looking forward to it. It'll also, it won't be as straightforward, because I think if you look at Elon's other accomplishments, these are science, right? I mean, this is all science-based, whether it's Tesla or SpaceX or SolarCity or whatever else, right? And so the externalities were different. I think the externalities in this case, which is the fact that, platforms have long become publishers right now, and this whole freedom of speech, how do you moderate it, etc., will be a super difficult challenge. It will be a different challenge. I'm not saying it's a bigger challenge than trying to colonize Mars, right? Of course not. But it's a different challenge. And I think he has the right attitude about it. I mean, which is that I'm going to make this algorithm open source, right? I'm going to put it out there for everyone to see what gets promoted, why. Which I think is fair. I think it's the beginning of a very important step, I think. So yeah, I mean, that will be really interesting. Also, we had really good GST collections. April, I think it was something like 1.6 lakh crores or something like that, which is a phenomenal indication of the formalization of the economy, right? Some of them attributed to inflation, etc. But I think no doubt about it that the one nation, one tax, benefits are going to kick in, right? So that, and I'm also excited about LIC IPO that's coming up, you know. Yeah.
But interestingly, so I think the valuation was dropped from 65,000 crore to 21,000.
No, they plan to raise 21,000 crores, I think. So they're going to dilute about 5% to raise about 20,000 plus crores. And look, again, LIC is such an important business, you know, people don't quite realize.
If you combine the entire insurance industry together, still I don't think so. The market share will be more than that of LIC.
Yeah, they have some 65% market share, right, which is phenomenal. And think of insurance. Nobody really wakes up one fine day and says that, you know, I want to buy insurance, right? I mean, it's not that kind of product. It's not bought, it's sold, right? And so, yeah, LIC spent a ton of their time, money, resources evangelizing life insurance in India, right? So much so that, you know, it's synonymous with life insurance. And not just insurance, you know, I mean, LIC, you know, was perhaps the only financial instrument that people knew for a long, long time. Funnily enough, last week I had a call from an LIC agent who said that they'll quadruple my money, right? 4x my money. I said, so in what time? And, you know, she said 25 years, and that ended our conversation, you know, pretty abruptly after that. But yeah, I mean, and if you look at the assets under management as well, right? I think there's something like 25 lakh crore rupees of assets under management, and this AUM goes into very strategic things, right? I mean, more than 50% of it goes into government-backed securities and stuff. So this is the money that is funding your roads, electricity, power, all your infrastructure and stuff, right? So which is a great contribution to the nation. And also LIC's cash has been used to stabilize the markets as well, and fluctuate when fluctuations happen and so on. So yeah, it's a remarkable entity, and you know, our libertarian friends will think that, you know, governments should not have a part to play in business and so on, but there are few exceptions, and LIC is a glorious exception in that sense, right? I mean, it's a very amazingly run business, right? If it's been able to maintain its sort of a competitive advantage even after 15-20 years of private players stepping in. Yeah.
But you know, one thing which I think LIC has really set a global benchmark, so to say, is the way they have really engaged with their agents, right? Because I still remember when I was a kid, my relatives and all would come for this family gatherings, right? And they used to have discussions with my mom and dad saying, hey, have you bought an LIC policy for your son or for your daughter?
Yeah. I mean, every family has that one person who's like selling LIC policies, right? Yeah, I mean, I had a few as well in my
I think today they have close to 2.5-3 lakhs of
amazing agents. Yeah, 3 lakh agents, and those were the first micro entrepreneurs, right? So the significance of LIC is huge for India.
Cool.
So hopefully, I mean, you'll subscribe, right?
Oh yes, fingers crossed. Maybe you will get the allotment this time.
Well, let's see.
Let's not.
Maybe 14th time is the charm.
All right, but let's move on to the news from this week. So, Union Transport Minister has issued a circular to all EV manufacturers in India, asking them to stop production of launching any new models of two-wheelers in the country. Now, this is of course, with rising concerns over EV two-wheelers catching fire all around the country. They've also asked companies to voluntarily recall the entire batch if a vehicle catches fire. And of course, there could be a lot of issues for this. We discussed this in our last roundup as well, where one of the primary concern could be the entire design of the lithium-ion battery pack, which is really not conducive to the Indian weather conditions as well as the road conditions, right? But thinking about it, it also really boils down to the supply chain of these battery packs, because this entire EV revolution in India came in like a gold rush, right? Everyone and anyone wants to get a piece of that pie, likewise from investors, from car manufacturers as well, which really put a lot of burden into how these batteries were being sourced, right? And of course, the demand went up, the FAME subsidies kicked in, which kind of incentivized manufacturers to using the same design, how much more battery power can you pack into it?
Yeah.
And of course, when there's such rapid development going in, quality control definitely takes a hit. Yeah. But right now, we saw 4 was the number that we know of the number of two-wheelers that got fire. But this really,
lot more than that.
Yeah, but this really becomes a point of concern because, of course, the rise in fuel prices, EV is definitely going to come in way before than we anticipated.
Yeah, see, EV is deep tech, right? And deep tech, you can't really, do this whole fail fast and, let's put out an absolute shitty MVP out there and test and iterate. You can't do that, right? And especially when you talk about real world stuff like automobiles and things like that, right? The downside of your experimenting can have huge risks associated with it. Look, a couple of folks like Aether and Ultraviolet are really serious about this, right? And they have been building for, Aether has probably been building since 2013 or something, right? Ultraviolet, I know, have been building from 2015. Now, these guys have invested a lot of time and effort and resources in really building the tech out, right? I'm afraid, the others have taken sort of an easy route out, right? And have kind of imported bikes from China, bikes or batteries from elsewhere, and have, tried to like customize it for the Indian context and setting and whatnot, right? I'm not sure if, that is the way out. I'm not sure if that will really work as well for us. But let's hope that, people take this a lot more seriously. And the Union Minister, Mr. Gadkari, had posted a tweet thread as well, right? So there's going to be some consequences to not doing a good job in this. Also, it's very early, so the policy and the regulation again has to catch up. So there are plenty of these loopholes that people are kind of operating in. But, I really hope, as I've mentioned in the previous episodes as well, that people don't sully the pond. EV is super important for us, not just from a consumer perspective, even if we have to meet our climate goals, that we've promised during the COP climate summit and all of that stuff. EV can be really significant, right? India can be a leader in EV, and let's hope that all of this does not set back the consumer adoption as such.
Yeah. But also this whole demand in EV tech, and of course, as a solution to this battery problem, it's not only that, okay, we need to find another viable replacement for lithium-ion batteries, right? Because that will take some time and some serious R&D. What do you think could be other solutions to this problem? Like one which I can think of at the top of my head is this whole connected technology which we see in our mobile phones, right? So a lot of innovation can happen in this space as to like, hey, how your battery is getting charged, what's the temperature?
Yeah.
All of this information can be passed on to the user.
Yeah. No, the amount of electronics in automobiles have been going up like significantly, right? Today you can't even imagine like a mechanical automobile as such, right? It's a fair amount of electronics and amount of data that the bikes are picking up as well. We spoke about Ola, which put out a statement based on the data that they picked up on the vehicle that caught fire, right? Yeah. So they had data around, how much torque and, how much speed the vehicle was going at, etc. Now, this is all real-time data. So there is plenty of data available, and I'm sure that they're picking it up, and I'm sure that they're iterating and everything. Essentially, quality control is a key thing in in this, right? Elon Musk has done a fabulous job with Tesla, but I think Tesla is perhaps the only company that has been able to do it at scale at that pace.
But I think, right? Tesla also had its learning.
Exactly, even they had the learning curves and everything. And Tesla is 18 years old, right? Yeah. So they've had their fair share of troubles, but for the rest of them, right, manufacturing is not like a software business. I'm afraid you can't go into it thinking of this whole fail fast methodology, right? It's impossible to do it that way.
You can't regularly push updates to fix.
No, you may very well push software updates and everything, but quality control and testing is a huge thing. You can't do it on an ongoing basis, right? It has to be good and done when you ship it out, right? And that's what we're realizing. Even if it's one bike out of 1,000 that screws up like this, it's very risky.
Right, yeah. So at the beginning of the month, we were talking about how the government plans to, officially launch the ONDC platform in a couple of cities. And I think last week on Friday, they formally announced that the pilot phase went live in 5 cities, which includes Delhi, NCR, Bangalore, Bhopal, Shillong, and Coimbatore. Now, of course, we have discussed this couple of times that the entire plan for ONDC is to break down the monopoly of the e-commerce giants of, Flipkarts and Amazon. And offline also, before we started recording this show, Roshan, you sounded very optimistic about what ONDC is going to do for nation building.
Absolutely.
So
See, I think ONDC is going to do for businesses what Aadhaar and UPI have done for individuals. And I'm so happy and so positive about this, because if you look at India, right, it's a huge informal economy. We have so many traders, so many shops and merchants and everything, right? Now, all of them can leverage the power of e-commerce, right? And they don't have to depend on an Amazon or a Flipkart or whoever else to, sort of help them with this transition, right? Although, let me say this, right? Amazon and Flipkart have done a fabulous job in building this category, right?
and changing consumer mindset and building infrastructure, all of those things. Right, we owe them a huge debt. But having said that, we should have open protocols for something as essential as this. I mean, after the pandemic, especially, we've realized, how much of retail is moving to the doorstep delivery and stuff, right? I mean, is moving to e-commerce. So ONDC is one of those things that will completely transform e-commerce, right? Again, we've spoken about it earlier, but roughly what it means is it'll have open network and protocols to allow buyers and sellers to transact irrespective of what platforms they belong to, right? And there will be logistic infrastructure, supply chain, warehousing, so on and so forth, right? I mean, all of this will be available on an open platform, open network. And one thing that's really heartening to note about India's policy making, right? Whether it is Aadhaar, UPI, FASTag, account aggregators framework, you name it. I mean, these are population level transformation and changes that is happening, right? I mean, it's so inclusive and it's happening in a very decentralized fashion, which is the opposite of, how policy making was, back in the day, right? I mean, typical bureaucratic babudam as such. And think of it, right? I mean, it's all technology led. Right, we're talking about stacks and protocols. We're not talking about like farmans, right? We're not talking about laws and regulation as such, which is remarkable. I'll tell you, I mean, it's like, I don't think any country in the world has been able to do it as much, right? In that fashion, at that scale. And think about the fact also that, it's very ecosystem driven, right? I mean, we talk about fintechs regularly on the podcast. How many of these fintechs are leveraging the UPI stack right now? So many of them. And similarly, for all of the other protocols that will be established as well, whether it's the health stack, whether it's ONDC, it'll involve like open participation from private players in the market as well. So I am super optimistic about, what ONDC can do for India. And I'm, if bunch of these things kick in, whether it's the health stack, the account aggregators framework, ONDC, various other things, right? It's going to be an amazing decade for us, right? I mean, we're going to simply transform this decade, because even simple things, right? I mean, you think of something like FASTag, the fact that, trucks don't have to wait at, poll booths to pay stuff, right? Is such a huge difference. It makes such a huge difference in productivity, right? And in collections also.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think if a bunch of these things, play out, it'll be a fantastic decade for India. And kudos to Mr. Nandan Nilekani. I think he has been, truly worthy of a Bharat Ratna, I would say, for India. I mean, phenomenal achievement. And the person's drive is so inspiring, I mean, a man who has probably achieved everything, right? Still so enthusiastic about causing a change. I think he is an inspiration for all young Indians.
Yeah, absolutely. But the way I see ONDC, right, it's also like an enabler for the people who will be using the platform, all the MSMEs, the retailers and stuff. Because if you look, I mean, in the e-commerce, the traditional e-commerce space, you've seen what the likes of Thrasio are doing, Thrasio, Mensana, right? These companies are helping other retailers, gain the advantage with digital platforms being across, helping them capitalize on it and then scaling these businesses up. I feel ONDC is going to become a platform for merchants across the country like that. And in fact, they're already partnering with a lot of players. They've partnered with eSamuday already. For ERP management, they're partnering with GoFrugal. For marketing, there's Growth Falcon. There is Seller App for automation and data insights. Right? And all 80 firms currently are at some stage or the other of integrations with the platform.
eSamuday, in fact, the founder Anup Pai was on our podcast sometime back, and he was talking about how digital can enable communities and commerce to thrive, right, in all of these tier 2 cities, villages, and so on. So yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable the amount of potential that it has. Yeah.
I mean, it's not only in the broader e-commerce industry where we're seeing such partnerships open up, but recently Kalyan Krishnamurthy, who is the CEO of Flipkart Group, in one of their company town halls announced that e-cart can now be used by other e-commerce players to manage their logistics and delivery. And already it has added about 30 clients and is looking to onboard more as it doubles down its internal logistics infrastructure. Nykaa, FirstCry and others are potential customers of this initiative. But interestingly, this is also not the first time that Flipkart has tried to let other players use e-cart, because when Walmart took over the Flipkart group in 2018, there were talks going on for this, but it really wasn't doubled down on it. But yeah, I mean, right now, I'm sure while eCart is opening up its doors to other players, but for some of its direct competitors like Meesho and all, I don't think they would be allowing them to use it.
No, I think there might be riders in place as to who they will work with and so on. But, interestingly, on the last roundup, we spoke about how, hypergrowth businesses have to bundle and unbundle their core, right? What is core business to them? So we spoke about it in context of Swiggy investing in Rapido, I think, right?
Right, yes.
So clearly for Swiggy, the whole logistics and delivery aspect of it is, at this point in their journey, they don't feel that it's absolutely core for them to manage that, right? And you're seeing kind of a reverse approach with Flipkart, right? At Flipkart stage in the business, they feel that e-cart or the delivery and the logistics aspect is significant enough to spin it off as a business itself.
Right.
We've seen how PhonePe, for example, operates separately, and it's a amazing acquisition, right? I mean, that Flipkart did. So yeah, very interesting. And I think, it's also recognizing the fact that, e-commerce in India will be beyond an Amazon or a Flipkart. We talked about, how some of the social commerce and stuff is kicking in, right? Where a lot of this plug and play infrastructure on tech and logistics and all of that will help micro entrepreneurs. So this is also a recognition of that, and of course, Flipkart has been operating for the last, 10 or 15 years, and they've built up a huge amount of expertise in delivery, right? I mean, they probably deliver to more pin codes in India than anyone else,
Correct,
perhaps,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting.
And also this ties up with the next item of news that we'll be discussing. This whole gig economy, right? Especially with folks like, delivery executives or logistics partners, riders. This has opened up such a major source of like jobs in the country, right? Of course, this took a hit when the pandemic set in 2020, but right now it's again making a comeback. And in fact, it's going so strong, right? That Swiggy recently announced that a launch of a career development program for its fleet executives called Step Ahead. Now, with this program, they want to reach out to the delivery partners like who have completed, I think, 2 years with Swiggy, and train them to become managers to manage the fleet.
Interesting.
I mean, imagine at what scale that's growing.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, this also kind of like makes you want to draw parallels to what's happening with companies like Grab and Gojek, which are like super platforms in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is amazing. See, with these partners and everything, I think Swiggy has kind of realized that they have to offer some kind of long-term career growth for them, right? They can't use them in a very transactional fashion. And I even think that, tomorrow we might have a case where some of them graduate to have agencies of people, right? And they will work with Swiggy as agencies. Anyone who says that, unemployment is a huge problem in India, and it is, I'm not belittling the problem, right? Should just look at what a huge demand there is for all these kind of people, right? Delivery personnel, drivers, chefs, plumbers, carpenters, etc. There's a huge demand for this, semi-skilled labor as such, right? And Swiggy treating its partners as truly partners is a very heartening thing. I think others will definitely follow, because there was also some controversy on the fact that these guys are not employees. So
Yeah.
it
I mean,
makes it.
Sorry, but if you remember the case with Uber, I mean, it was really big. I think it was in US where they said that this washroom should not be used by, driver partners or something. It was just for employees only.
Right.
It was a huge outcry.
No, there is a discretion in terms of how they treat employees versus partners. But I think employees I think partners are the core of their business, right? So they do realize and recognize that it's really important. We had the case of Urban Company as well, right? I mean, there were a few protests and so on. I think all of them kind of realize, right? And that's why, I mean, they're, helping with insurance, helping with these value-added services so that it becomes a viable career for someone, right? And they can actually graduate, and it's not very transactional. Because see, the next, 100,000, maybe like 100,000 jobs or so, right? I mean, the next few jobs will not come from, being a bank employee, right? I mean, already, if you look at these bank exams, the demand supply is like so skewed, right? I mean, there's so many people writing for so few jobs. So the next, 100,000 jobs, right? next few jobs will come from these kind of enterprises, right? And I think so that's why, I mean, it's very, very important for the economy, I feel. Yeah.
Cool. Let's move on to some more funding related news from the week. InsurTech platform Turtlemint has raised about $120 million in a Series E fundraise, which is led by Amansa Capital, Jungle Ventures, and Nexus Venture Partners. Although the company hasn't really disclosed the valuation for the current fundraise, sources say that it's valued close to $900 to $950 million. Turtlemint is a digital platform which is designed to help financial advisors understand and distribute insurance to their community of customers. This really wonderfully ties up with what we spoke about, the LIC agents.
Yeah.
And this is where the digital infrastructure is moving towards, I feel.
Yeah. So Turtlemint has a very unique approach. So they have an agent first approach, right? So you can become an advisor on Turtlemint. Of course, I mean, you have to have your IRDAI certifications and whatnot. And they're digitizing the entire distribution process. I mean, if you look at insurance, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's sold, it's not bought. Nobody thinks of, buying insurance one fine day just like that, right? So it's a very consultative process. You end up talking to people, you end up getting advice and then making that purchase, right? So which means that these agents are never going to go away. They're always going to be there in some form or fashion. And Turtlemint is digitizing that entire journey for them. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Anything that can promote this kind of micro entrepreneurship is really fabulous.
Yeah. But also, especially the role of technology that comes in over here. If you look at the role of an agent, right? Maybe like from the 80s and 70s, right? It has completely evolved. Like today, with of course the internet, with the whole information out there. Earlier, it was you had to just trust on an agent to like whatever he or she would say. You had to like take it for that. But now with the internet and the information that's present out there, the role of an agent has also become more consultative, as you rightly mentioned.
Exactly.
Which is they become more of advisors, right? And platforms like Turtlemint and the likes, they're helping people to make that change.
Yeah. No, agents have to become advisors, and this is the case that we often make at Waymo as well, right? Where we work. That, agents have to become consultative. Because see, if you look at especially, I mean, it's prevalent even in the US, right? I mean, if you have that one agent or broker that you buy from, right? That person is your end all and be all for everything related to that, right? Related to insurance. In fact, I mean, people, don't buy digital sometimes only so that, they have one throat to choke in case of any claims or settlements or whatever, right? I mean, one person that you have to reach out to. And I myself have bought from an insurance agent, right? Whether my health insurance or term insurance or whatever. Because that there's that one person that you can reach out to. And oftentimes, if you look at the life of an insurance agent, right? I mean, that person is in between the consumer and the company or the carrier, right? And he or she has to give all sorts of answers, which requires all kinds of data from the carrier, which that person doesn't really have at this point. Think of something like a claims or something, right? And if I keep bugging my agent that, why hasn't this happened, that happened, whatever, he has to go and fetch the data from somewhere, right? And that data, if it's all digital, right? And if that guy has a very streamlined dashboard on an app saying that, hey, it's processing, these are 2-3 things that are pending, here is when the expected, time for resolution is. I mean, it can be amazing. You think about like when you have a problem with Swiggy or something, the order is refunded or the case is settled in a matter of minutes, right? Now, why can't that kind of experience happen for insurance? And that's where innovations like Waymo or even Turtlemint really help. Yeah.
Some other fundraisers from the week included that of Genie Mode, which is a B2B tech startup that raised $28 million from Tiger Global and Info Edge Ventures. Healthcare startup IU Health raised $27 million from the Fundamentum Partnership, 57 Stars, KPR Investments, Stellaris Venture Partners, Vertex Ventures, Altaria Capital and others. TrueMeds, which is a telehealth platform, raised $22 million from Westbridge Capital, Info Edge Ventures, Asha Impact and IAN Fund. Drone startup IdeaForge raised $20 million from Florintree, Celesta Capital, Infosys, Qualcomm, Infina and Exim Bank of India. Fintech startup Zenda raised $9.4 million from STV, Cotu, Global Founders Capital and VentureSook. EV startup BGOS raised $6.8 million from a group of investors which is led by Darshan Patel, who is the founder of Vinny Cosmetics. Tractor Junction, which is another rural vehicle marketplace, raised $5.7 million from Info Edge Ventures, Omnivore, Ag Funder, Grow Impact Fund and others. It's really interesting mix. I mean, we have from health tech, we have from B2B space, and again, it's good to see that a lot of
No, I'm super excited about IdeaForge, man. I think they're doing some fantastic work, and we've spoken about drones on that episode with Vipul, right? Of RF Unmanned Systems. I think, I mean, this whole drone technology and stuff can have like transformative effects on the economy. So I'm really excited about that.
And along with this, there was a recent tweet by Piyush Goyal. Sorry, not a tweet, but he was addressing a conference where he said that he was actually urging founders to set up companies in India rather than move abroad, to save taxes and stuff. And he also set up a very lofty goal of, by having 1,000 unicorns by the end of 2030. That's a very tall goal. I think we're 5 away from hitting the 100 mark right now.
Yeah, no, Mr. Piyush Goyal is extremely dynamic, very entrepreneurial person, right? Has a reputation to get things done, right? And look, this. I saw this tweet on my timeline, and there were a bunch of snarky replies to it saying that, hey, nobody really sets up a registration in in the US or elsewhere, Delaware or all of those places to avoid taxes. I mean, it's more so that funding is streamlined and a bunch of other, not just market accessibility, but also, I mean, I think foreign remittances in India, I think it's a problem, the way it's handled, right? There are plenty of cases of founders closing around and, waiting for months together for the money to hit the bank. And the way these private banks operate as well, you name it, right? They're very antsy about it, and it's very sarkari in nature, right? So with that is the reason why, I mean, people kind of set up outside, I mean, it's not entirely because they want tax havens as such, right? So yeah, I mean, I think the ministry is well aware of the problem, and they're trying to solve some of this stuff. We've spoken about how forward thinking India has been in terms of tech policy and stuff, and this whole ease of doing business. I mean, we've been slowly climbing up the ranks over the last 4-5 years especially. I really hope that something comes about, right? I mean, that we're able to streamline this policy and stuff. Maybe we should cover some of this policy stuff on a separate episode with someone who would be an expert on this stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and also good to say, I think it was sometime this month only where we were talking about the various partnerships the center is running with the state to set up all of these, incubation centers, research centers. I think most recently RBI set up a innovation hub in Bangalore.
Yeah.
Earlier there was another innovation center which was set up in Telangana. Right.
See, most startups just want the government to get out of the way, right? And, if you look at Indian IT, that's really how it progressed. So, yeah, I mean, let's hope those things are streamlined,
Yeah. So, Roshan, I think this week, unfortunately, we were not able to put out any episodes, right? But you have really amazing conversations lined up with Chirag of GoQuick and Kalpit of Netcore.
Yeah.
Right? What are you looking forward to talking to them about?
So I'm really looking forward to both these conversations. We've spoken about Netcore earlier in the context of their acquisition of Unboxed, right? I mean, they're a 20-year plus business, and they have this very interesting marketing automation suite of products. So Kalpit is the CEO of Netcore, and I'm really looking forward to understanding how he kind of sees the future, right, and how they want to build that out. GoQuick is again a very interesting business in the e-commerce segment. We've spoken about plenty of these businesses that are serving e-commerce itself, right? E-commerce is a significant market in itself that people are building for e-commerce, like how people build for a particular market, right? I mean, whether it's healthcare or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, I'm really truly looking forward to talking to both of these folks. Should be interesting conversations. So yeah.
Awesome. So if there are any specific questions which you would like us to ask to the people we interview in the podcast, do tweet them to us at our handle Operator Startup. Also, a huge shout out to Anil, Dheeraj, Hemang and Nayan for the valuable feedback. You guys are super fans for the week. I always appreciate such support from you guys. And yeah, Roshan, this was a very amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed having this chat with you on this Sunday afternoon.
Always a good conversation when it's live and not in front of not in front of the
just staring at a screen.
Yeah. So thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate your support, and look forward to seeing you guys on another episode.